Kinds of one thing. Number one, there's the engineering feedback, right?
Okay.
I'm going to deliver this change today to find out if it breaks it. And then there's the business feedback. I'm going to deliver the smallest slice of this next feature to find out if it's valuable and deliver that and get feedback. But
figure out if it's safe to merge and whether it's safe to continue with these requirements.
Yeah.
That's all.
Just because it passes all the tests doesn't mean that it doesn't break something in production once it finally gets to a production environment. I try to have a high level of confidence, but we're never 100% sure.
Yeah.
And so we want to get feedback as rapidly as possible on the engineering thing. People tell me there's no value in delivering anything until it's feature complete. No. I know it's stable. I want to make sure we're on the right track. I don't want to invest too much money in this idea. I don't want to assume my idea is correct. I want to assume my idea is incorrect. It's a scientific experiment. I'm trying to invalidate the hypothesis. And we should be ecstatic when it's successful and just accept when it's not. Mm-hmm. And then how do we change course to chase the value instead of just assuming value?
I would like to add something to the term of confidence. I think confidence doesn't mean that you are 100%, as you said, 100% safe to deploy. It's about to be confident that you can handle a situation even if something happened, but you expect feedback. So what you definitely get is feedback. And if the feedback is a negative, you can react quickly on that. So this is confidence. It's not about, I'm 100% sure that nothing will happen. I think this is a big misconception.
No, I agree. And people focus on the wrong thing. I want to make sure that everything is perfect before we deliver. That's the wrong thing.
Hello, and there we are.
That was a nice, cool intro. Still got to practice that transition a little bit, but I
know.
The production quality. Hello, everyone. Production quality is amazing.
I hate watching myself.
So with us today is Bryan Finster, and what you just watched,
the
rock star from Defense Unicorns. What you just watched was sort of our first episode that really inspired today's topic, and really that highlights the continuation of really what we're gonna have a deep dive on today. Bryan, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me again. Hopefully no one gets tired of me.
Adrian, how are you doing?
Good. Really was I was really looking forward for this one because it will be a great session again. The last one was really great. We created 12 clips out of that, and you just saw one of those. And the topics are just great. We have together with Bryan, and I'm not really sure the topic. So what we're going to do to talk about today, because it will be properly, it will be very audience driven, let's say. So
Yes.
everyone here who's listening today is invited to toss comments, and we will definitely go over all those comments, right?
So the reason we got together is that Bryan and yourself had like a really interesting debate on one of the Twitter threads, on one of the LinkedIn threads, and we figured, okay, it's time to get back together, get back on stage, and discuss recurring issues in the engineering culture, let's say. And today's topic specifically on your engineering outcomes is basically talking about all of the principles that we keep recommending and going back to this core idea that it's not enough that you just have years of experience under your belt. You actually have to have had the opportunity to be solving hard problems. And we'll be looking into how certain principles, disciplines solve which hard problems. So how we can actually learn them.
And how much of that is luck?
Yeah.
And how much of that is actually career decisions you make? The original thread we were talking about how a lot of the things that we push as these are good ways to develop software are solutions to problems that people don't see if they're working at a very, very small scale.
Yeah.
And so if people have been in a situation where they've only worked at a very small scale for their entire career, I get pushback from those people all the time about how I'm being unrealistic about some things. Had that earlier this week about how I was being unrealistic about preventing anybody from accessing production directly. That's just unrealistic. I'm like, yeah, it's a problem.
The central theme about today's topic is going to this root. Really, the root cause of root cause analysis is if you want to grow as an engineer, you have to take responsibility for that, right? So a question to chat, perhaps, if you're live here with us, ask yourself, or maybe write in chat, what is it the thing that you wish changed in your environment, where you're 100% convinced that it's not your responsibility to implement it, that it has to come top down, or that somebody else has to bring it into the company hierarchy or into the culture?
Well, and I want to give a personal story about why I think a lot of this has to do with luck. So I've been very fortunate. I got laid off in Dallas at the end of 2000 and got a job at Walmart. Now that was luck, and the reason it was luck is because number one, I'm now working in an organization with massive scale and surrounded by really smart people. Okay. Later on when we're trying to figure out how to deliver better business value, and I think I've talked about this before, and we decided to focus on continuous delivery, that was luck because number one, we had very smart leadership that understood the problem, depended on us to give a solution instead of hiring in consultants. Again, surrounded by very smart people. We're all working on this problem together. And so we had the leadership support, the technical expertise to figure it out. And we're able to go do that and learned quite a bit that other people just don't ever see that problem. And the third one I want to point to, and I talked to on my podcast that me and Tracy Bannon just recorded, we were talking about the moving legacy systems, modernizing legacy systems. I've had the opportunity to do that twice and fail and partially succeed and figure out and understand why both the failure and the partial success happened and why it was only a partial success. That was just fortunate. And I had several years ago, I had a tech lead introduce me to a new developer on her team and wanted my advice, my career advice. I said, find really hard problems.
Yes.
There was a long period of my career where I was not working on hard problems. It was the same thing every single day, and I was stagnated, and I forgot how to learn. Find very hard problems. If you get bored, move. Either move within your organization to a harder problem or change organizations. But if you want to be a good developer, find really hard problems.
Yeah.
It is what we are problem solvers. So if you don't solve problems anymore, you've lost your purpose. So actually, it is not about really losing your purpose, but you won't become better. You won't. And on some point, and I had this as well. It was like a dark age in my career life, where it was basically for roughly 5 years, nothing really changed. So I've done everything. I even just developed this feeling of being very good in what I am. Because everything that was a mistake, because I was
awesome. Yeah. Same thing for me. It was for like 10 years for me, and I was awesome. I was like top tier.
The problem is there were no problems, so it was easy to solve them. There were when you solve 10 times the same mediocre problem and you feel very good about it because you problem solver. Huh? That's not so good. You should find problems where you really don't know exactly how you're gonna solve this now, which challenges you, which actually bothers you during the night on some point. You need to think about solutions until next day, and when you have that, this is where I get challenged. This is where this is part of my life. It is totally okay to take those thoughts with me because they are part of my life. I'm the engineering type of person, and since I got aware of that, I never got back. So since then, every day I ask myself, what do I do better? What do I do better today than I had it done yesterday? So every day I want to become a little bit better, able to solve more complex challenges.
No, and I'll give you a concrete example of what you just talked about. So I ride a BMW GS Adventure motorcycle. BMWs, you need a laptop to do maintenance on a BMW motorcycle, at least modern ones. And adding accessories like extra lights and an air horn and things like that, you're dealing with a CAN bus system. You have a digital system for controlling things on the bike. You have to put analog things into. When I got my bike and I started wiring everything together to add all the accessories to it I was doing very small deliverables. Plug one thing in, test it. Plug the next thing in, test it. And doing basically test-driven development on the motorcycle, because the risk of doing something was messing up that canvas system was pretty high. The principles are so important to understand and to take them seriously. This morning, I had somebody DM me on LinkedIn and said that, number one, they really appreciated what I talk about continuous delivery, but they had this really hard testing problem that was preventing it from doing it on the in their environment. And it's a problem I never solved before. But because I understood the principles I was going after for testing, and because I knew what to Google for, I said, this should solve your problem. I believe this will work. Let me know if it doesn't.
Yeah. So it seems like you got extremely lucky. You got exposed at Walmart, by the sound of it, to quite a few of these principles that then in tandem ended up solving a really hard problem for Walmart. Is that about right? Because
we had to solve the problems, and we also had, I didn't discover Martin Fowler's blog, and I didn't buy the first copy of Continuous Delivery that was bought in our area, but we found good solutions, sustainable solutions, instead of what's the quick fix. We didn't go for the quick fix. We went for what is a solution.
I got lucky early on in my career. I got laid off from an agency very early on during the 2007-2008 financial crisis. We did staff cutting, and then I felt terrible after that. But immediately I got a recommendation to work at a large advertising agency. And then I really got into sort of application development, not just web development. and sort of understanding really robust, complex backend systems, because we had high uptime, low latency requirements, and I learned canary deployments there, and I really understood what it means to test something first and then gradually deploy it and then test it against the market and then see, once it's live, then see, okay, do I want to continue with this or do I want to pull it off and polish it a little bit more? But to actually use real world data, not data that I am masquerading as being real world according to some requirements. And I watched your recent podcast. I listened to it with the AB team.
A/B testing. I was
A/B testing, but that's their.
Yeah, that was a really fun conversation.
And Brent mentioned, you about 20 minutes in, you mentioned this idea of testing and requirements are about testing whether you got the requirements of the user right. Right. So you're testing on the market to check whether you understand the requirements. But what we're not doing, what QA is definitely not, is adhering to the spec. Because that's what a lot of people think testing is. There's a spec, and we need to test whether we adhere to the spec. And then that's actually a very non-agile, very old school, process-driven, sort of almost activity-driven process.
Yeah, it's the
where you
hubris.
Want to be busy. Hubris, exactly.
It's hubris that we have a good idea, and it's just no, it's not. That's just hubris.
Yeah, if you implement it exactly how we said it should be, it'll be successful. So we need to test whether it's implemented exactly as we said it should be, right? And that creates a lot of cost centers in engineering, and that's really dear to my heart. Like that's also why we wanted to talk to you specifically, because I want to flip this conversation on its head.
Sure.
Right? So we can start with continuous delivery, perhaps, right? So we keep talking about continuous delivery. You're also a honorary member and on minimum CD. And that seems to be a very important project to you. But what is the hard problem that continuous delivery is solving?
The hard problem is, how do we get faster feedback on that idea? Well, there's a few, right? Because there's not one. One that's near and dear to me is I have a stable way to fix production at 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm tired and stressed, that will keep me safe, right? It removes as much of my mistakes as possibly can while I'm tired and stressed and trying to get production up and running again. Okay, that's near and dear to my heart. And developers who don't have the fortunate situation of operating what they build are struggling to be good developers in my mind. The other thing is that if we take it seriously, it forces us to just drive all kinds of waste out of the process, which makes it far less expensive to try these ideas and gives us a way to rapidly iterate on an idea within the same day in some cases. I mean, I can try something out and get feedback and then try it out again because it's so cheap to try. And I saw a talk with Adrian several years ago when he was at AWS, and he said if you wanted to focus on one metric to drive improvement, focus on cost of delivery. Just drive down the cost of delivery.
Yeah, because you'll be able to get feedback faster. So you'll be less afraid of getting feedback.
Yeah, and you'll start running experiments instead of going, well, that's too expensive to try, and just you can't be excellent and not do CD.
Yeah, a lot of my coachings have to deal with this idea of they put the cart before the horse. So they want to know that they're right before they go implementing it, rather than implementing something to check if they're right, or rather than implementing something to check if they're wrong, because if they're wrong, they'll know exactly what it is that they missed. Right? Yeah. But this idea that I think I'm right doesn't tell you anything new, right? So I think I'm right. I don't see anything wrong with this. Let's implement it, and let's invest a lot of time not talking to the market and building this. That seems to be this annoyance that really hinders a lot of engineers, a lot of engineering departments from actually making progress, because they think they are getting feedback from the market, but they're not actually addressing it in a way that would allow them to get feedback continuously. They're just doing it, a few times per year.
I was having a conversation with somebody else last week and we were talking about the interesting intersection of conclusions we've come to, where he came to it from a product point of view, and I came to it from a delivery and operations point of view, and coming to the conclusion that you can't, those are not different things, right? That to do really good operations and really good development, I had to back up all the way and become better at product. And how do I interact more closely with product people and get their information broken down to a point and get them involved with the delivery aspect and make it an entire thing instead of separate stages.
Jeff has a great comment on this. He mentions continuous delivery. If it takes a month to release to production, then how do you quickly fix a critical bug? You branch, of course. And so you have to fix it twice, drives up costs. And also on that other podcast, you mentioned something really important. Actually, it wasn't on the podcast. It was on the on our prep on Monday. You mentioned, right? So every time there's a human touch point, there's another opportunity to make a mistake.
You know, I used to my SVP at Walmart, voluntold me to do like this lightning talk at the end of every bi-weekly tech talk meeting that we had called 5-Minute DevOps, which is why my blog is called that. And sometimes I go up there and I talk about something, but sometimes I'd just be really frustrated with the organization and I would rant at them. And one of the rants I made is that number one, software, this software development thing is just a supply chain problem, supply chain of information. That's all it is. And we should be awesome at continuous delivery because we're a supply chain company. I was like, why aren't we? And then I got off the stage. But because it's just supply chain. And to your point, the way I look at this, it's the principles of supply chain. One of the core things is minimize touch points, because every time I touch anything, it costs money. And every time I touch a box, it risks damage. If you go into one of Walmart's big general merchandise distribution centers, there's 2 touch points on a box. Somebody unloads it from a truck onto a conveyor, and someone loads it off a conveyor onto a truck. Everything else is automated. Right? Minimizes damage, reduces costs.
That has really shifted my perspective as well, because that gave me a really good analogy to throw around at cocktail parties about strong-based development. Because that's really, if I have a long-lived branch, I have to merge or keep synchronized, I go from 1 touch point to maybe 3 or 4. And every time I touch that branch of code, I risk damaging it. I risk, it might have worked on the developer's machine, but for every, going from works on developer's machine to production, if the developer wasn't developing on production, that's already a touch point. And now for every new branch, I risk breaking that promise of it worked on my machine. Right, and it's branches that cause that.
I ran into an architect once who was trying to standardize how development was done in his area, and he wanted to mandate everybody use Git flow. Now, I was also working in platform at the time, and we were fundamentally opposed to Git flow, not just because it made the platform hard to use, because it's just the wrong way to do software development. And we were the people pushing the CD. And I literally wrote up like this huge paper to give back to this architect, explaining the difference in touch points, the difference in costs, the risk that he was injecting just to have this discipline of Git flow.
Git flow is not software development. Git flow is software stagnation.
It's continuous isolation and eventual delivery.
Continuous isolation and eventual delivery.
Actually, I created a T-shirt, and it's out there on TeePublic that has Git flow. It says, "When you absolutely positively have to deliver eventually."
Dennis, go ahead.
I can sense there is a restaurant metaphor coming. I'll have a good one for later.
You should change your icon from this light bulb to a restaurant.
A restaurant. Maybe there's a future for that.
There are some more comments of Jeff.
We already did this one.
There was a star still on it.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mark it. Thank you for the comment, Jeff. Bryan, I think trunk-based development is a natural follow-up on this. You're on your line of thinking. So what is the hard problem that, if you get lucky enough to work in an organization that does it, what is a hard problem that trunk-based development is solving? Addressing.
Well, it's getting you into a releasable state faster, right? And it's also, well, because it's removing friction so that you can get smaller batch of change. Okay, so you have to look at all. Batch size is so important, right? Because if I have a smaller change set, it's easier to do code review on. It's easier to it's harder to break, and I can get faster feedback on that small change. And if I have to go through several hoops to get there, it's going to naturally disincentivize me from doing smaller batches of work. You know, if I have to send it down multiple branches just to slowly promote it to the trunk, then it's just too expensive in my time, in team frustration. It's just too expensive to do small batches of work. And so then you start defaulting back to I'm completing this feature and then crossing my fingers that it doesn't blow up.
That's the broken window symptom, right? So once a house has a damaged window, it looks abandoned, which encourages more looting, which encourages more damage to it. If I use a restaurant analogy, it's the difference between having a really messy kitchen and then having to invest a lot of time into cleaning it, into actually going through industrial cleaning, versus having a clean kitchen and then maintaining the state of a clean kitchen as you're constantly using it.
When I give internal talks about doing continuous delivery, I would sidestep the entire. Well, I just throw a challenge out there to people who thought that GitFlow or some other multiple branch strategy was the right thing to do. I'm like, hey, look, you should use whatever branching strategy makes you happy. But if you're doing continuous integration, that all you have to do is just make sure that change is on the trunk. At least, that you made a change today, it's on the trunk today, and it's fully tested. If you can do that with GitFlow, I don't care. But you can't. You just can't. But hey, try. Just use GitFlow. Just make sure you're actually doing real CI, because CI is a critical quality behavior.
Yeah.
Do it anyway.
Every company I join to help them is actually in this state where they have GitFlow or some form of GitFlow. So most of the people don't really do GitFlow as it was defined, but the idea behind it is the same. Yeah. There is some isolation. It is just long-lived branches, let's call it like that. And it is basically all the time. You have everywhere the same problems. You have this second backlog stacking up in the review area. You have so many problems during the thing. You have this reluctance to actually merge because people are afraid to merge, because sometimes you want to merge something and two other people have done a lot of refactoring already. Files aren't there anymore, and those kind of problems you have that. And it is really frustrating, because it's especially business stakeholders often ask me like, hey, can't we do anything to speed that up, to get some feedback? They provide a ticket, and after 2 weeks there's nothing. There's simply zero. Even if there is already 70% of the way gone, no one knows about it, and you don't know if it's still viable, if it's good, if it's working, if it's acceptable or something like that. You don't know, and this is, I think, one of the most severe problems I found out there. Because if you solve this, suddenly most of the problems are gone, especially, and this is an interesting point, cultural problems as well. Because if you do CI, if you do CD, if you do trunk-based development, you work as a team, you collaborate as a team. It is like you push and pull. It's like getting things and doing synchronous reviews.
It takes so much teamwork to get it done. I mean, it does. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry to interrupt. This is one of the things that I touch on, starting with the very first talk we gave external to Walmart about the impact of CD, was that it created so much teamwork on a team that wasn't really a team. And it made us love development again. It's just, it's such an awesome way to work. It baffles me that people resist it.
Yeah, and that's one of the, I don't know if for better or for worse, but one of the most, let's say, properties of teams that work with me, because they might have some dysfunction or they might experience a recurring issue in quality or deploying times. One of the biggest issues I see is that the team is simply not a team. They're just not working as a team. They are sort of co-located in spirit, or they are sort of co-located in terms of they share a manager, or they share a source of requirement output machine, whatever that is, whether that's a person, a machine, or a
shared
Jira board.
backlog. Yeah.
A shared backlog, yes, right. Yeah. They share a backlog, but that doesn't make them a team. A team is when a team means that if I ask you what is the most important thing, everybody agrees on what it is, and everybody is either working on it or working adjacent to it. So they're all sort of in the same boat, driving in the same direction.
There's all sorts of behaviors that we talk about being important that people don't understand why they're important. One of those is using a pull system for work instead of assigning work. Well, that's one of the biggest.
Let's continue with that one. Like, what hard problem does pulling tickets solve rather than pushing work?
It's psychological. If we're pulling work, then I'm highly invested in making sure that everything that we are signing up to do, that I'm aware of what it is and how we're going to get it done. If we start sprint planning by saying, okay, here's your 4 tickets for the sprint, I only care about
you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this.
Yeah. But if you say, hey, this is what we as a team are trying to deliver, and we're just gonna, whoever's next available to pull work just grabs the next thing off the backlog, then I'm highly invested in making sure that we understand what that work is. And that's not a theory. I mean, that's something that we've seen that, that we experienced on that very first team where we flip things around and say, to do CD, we have to back it all the way up to get clear requirements. When you get clear requirements, everybody has to be invested in what the requirements definition. And every single team that when I was in the dojo, we went through, that's one of the first things. It's like, I can go to your Jira board and see that there's name filters on the Jira board, and I already know that your team is broken.
Same. Yeah, because everybody's looking for, okay, what's next for me? What's
next for me instead of what's the team's next goal.
So true. Yeah. We have a comment from William. Truck-based development is good, also keeps scope smaller, decreasing likelihood of bugs and context lacking review and oversight. I just want to mention, wait. Jeff has a follow-up on this as well. If you can switch over. Many leaders hope and assume that all software changes are independent, that leaders can pick and choose work items, code changes independently. But that conflicts with refactoring and code reuse. Merge conflicts do happen. If you use branches, of course. Bryan,
so this is something else that truck-based development, continuous integration, they don't eliminate merge conflicts. They just make them smaller and less impactful and less common. But going back to fortunate problems I've been exposed to, and I don't know if I talked about this last time, that one of the jobs I was given was being in charge of the team merging 400 branches every quarter. That gives you a new perspective on branching strategies and how to make that.
400 octopus merge.
I mean, but item number 1 was that the very first thing I did when I took over that team, I said, we're not merging code anymore. We'll do a test merge and tell you how bad the conflict is. But before I joined the team was trying to resolve merge conflicts. They thought that was their job, was to resolve merge conflicts, absent any context of what was happening on that branch before. And I pushed all that pain back on the development teams. Like, no, this is your pain. You're causing it. I need you to merge more frequently. You don't want to? Fine. You resolve the merge conflicts. But whoever gets in it first doesn't have any conflicts.
Yep. And that's really it. Like, when you have long-lived branches, everybody's sort of competing. What is the longest I can work in a branch while still being the first to merge? So I avoid that. And then a lot of nasty politics goes on in those teams. A lot of nasty politics. Like, I'm merging today. Nobody be finished before I am, please.
Yeah.
I want the first merge. And that just creates such a really
merge
toxic
early,
dynamic.
merge often, and it's less toil.
What I heard often as well is, could you please stop pushing?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
merging,
stop.
or,
Branch
or
freeze,
please don't make,
Yeah,
please
don't
don't,
commit.
please don't merge, please don't do reviews at the moment. I need to fix something in production or something
We're-
like that.
Attention,
we're
everyone!
freezing
I'm
Trump.
running npm update. Attention! I'm updating your package.
And this is one of those
Yeah,
great
it
things. You
happens.
start to build something, make a branch for 1 week, and you come back and you just realize that your entire tech stack is on a major version higher than you are. That's great. That's really great when you have that. That's awesome.
So somebody just made a point about trunk-based development that is partially correct,
Ajinkia.
right?
Practicing trunk-based development requires, in turn, the developers understand how to break their work up smaller batches.
Yes, that's absolutely true. But the other part of that is so important is that you have to actually take testing seriously, right? I mean, this is when we started on this path, because again, I was operationally responsible for what I did as a developer. I couldn't just throw it over the wall for some other sucker to eat my poor quality. Suddenly my focus became less how do I deliver this feature faster, and became far focused on how do I test this feature better. How do I test this change? How do I and of course that testing mindset started permeating everything I did. I gave a talk at an internal testing conference, and I talked about how you should test everything around you for value, and that you should, if you walk into a meeting, if you're invited to a meeting with no agenda, don't show up, because there's nothing to assert against to find out if that meeting was valuable.
So what's if we stay on this a little bit, on Ajinkia's comment, like, I like to think that teams aren't stupid, like they're very intelligent, and that there's a reason why they're doing what they're doing. So let's assume for a moment that a team is
not
doing
stupid.
Exactly.
They're not stupid. It's just ignorance. They've been trained to deliver complete features.
They've been
They haven't
trained
been
to deliver
trained.
complete features.
Yeah, either explicitly or implicitly, they've been trained to deliver complete features. This is one of the hardest habits to break. We had to break it. I had to break it personally, right? This is something I have a lot of empathy for, because I was trained to deliver complete features.
It's possibly the hardest lesson to learn, right? It's like you are doing large batches because you have been incorrectly or ignorantly thought that delivering complete features is the best way to produce quality.
But we should maybe not only focus on the engineers or developers who are really, producing code and refactoring code and pushing things. It is oftentimes that you have entire teams around that actually this is oftentimes an imperative hierarchy. So you have some masters, scrum masters, product owners, even CEOs running around and telling people what to do, and with expectations. They don't know the requirements, they don't know what's going on. They say there's some form of milestone, deadline, something that you need to follow, which is oftentimes very hard to follow. And this is something you need to change as well. So it's not about the engineers need to change their way of work. If you don't change those things as well, or even before that, the expectations will basically clash, and you will have other problems as well. So it is basically the entire tech organization. It's not only the engineering team, it is the entire tech organization who need to rethink to get into this idea of continuous delivery. Everyone should understand the benefits and work towards those things. You mentioned pool. I wanted to mention, why to pool things. It is you have better expectations, because if you assign 4 things for a period of time, for 1 or 2 weeks, you don't know exactly if you will be finished, because everyone is assuming that you do those 4 things in 1 week.
But what is if you want to do something right and it takes longer? If you just pull one thing and the expectation is you do it well and then it's done and it provides value, go to the next one, then you are in a flow. Everyone is happy then. This is what I can say from my experience as well. If you get to this point, even the CEOs, stakeholders, business stakeholders, they are all happy because they see progress. So it's not a problem anymore. The problem is they are afraid of seeing no progress. This is the reason why they put you more and more deadlines in front of you, and you can reverse that. And this is the reason why it's not only about ignorance. It's about fear. It's about not being aware of the entire problem and problematic environment around it. So if you want to tackle that, my experience is start with a culture. It's an engineering culture problem with a culture around the tech organization as well.
Well, and so one of the core ideas when I first suggested that we build this minimum CD thing was to create forcing functions to uncover these problems. That I agree that culture is a problem.
Forcing functions. So you mean incentives culturally, or are we talking like linters and something automated?
No, we're talking about things that incentivize behavior change.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It said, I can't solve this problem the way we're working today. We have to solve this problem, so we have to change the way we're working, and which has a cascading effect across the entire organization. Okay. Yeah. This is why I keep stressing that if you just answer the problem, why can't we CD? Like every single day, if you take continuous delivery seriously and you say, why can't we get deliverable changes, today's work, deliverable today, whether you deliver it or not, it's deliverable today. Why can't we do that? And then just fix everything upstream.
Yeah.
And then that's the central theme behind minimum CD is that if you do this, if you take this seriously, if you solve these 9 problems, that your organization will deliver better against your business goals and your culture will improve.
You're giving your business a chance. You solve these problems, you're giving your business the best chance you can give.
Well, and you can't have a toxic, bureaucratic, just malicious, infighting, terrible culture to work in and solve those 9 problems. You can't do it.
I had something interesting to say, but now it escaped me, so I'll return back to it.
Well, and I also wanted to talk a little bit, you reminded me something, Adrian, about the pull thing. My wife gives a talk called DevOps Do the Math, where she talks about the difference between using a pull system and the team focusing on work, and using a push system where you have assigned work for the team. And the fact that a push system assumes perfection and also assumes nothing ever goes wrong. And so she starts throwing things as like, oh, well, somebody was sick for 2 days and now we're 80% done and delivering nothing instead of delivering 80% of what we were going to do.
Everyone will be happy when they see already 80%. This is the point. And it is not about you haven't done something correctly. It's not about you are a poor developer because you only delivered 80% when 100 was expected. The thing is, people will lose this expectation of you being ready. It is they have the expectation that you deliver something, and the ball is then on their side. They need to then provide you feedback. This is what you need to understand. You reduce stress throughout the entire organization up to the clients, even clients, users, customers. They feeling less stress as well because they see results. Even if you ask for feedback, they are happy. They feel that you care about what you do for them. This is so important.
Yeah, it's just give me something so I know that things are going on. People love transparency. I heard for years, our this could be internal business or external. Our customers don't want change that frequently. Oh, they absolutely do. They absolutely.
Something's wrong. They don't want.
Well, even if things aren't wrong, especially if it's internal business, they want to see progress because they're at a job trying to get progress done, and they hand something to you, and then it's just a black hole. Unless we're able to just keep delivering, and they can see change and progress, and they feel better, and they start being collaborative instead of aggressive, like you talked about, Adrian. I've seen this.
In the last 2 decades, I had that very often that people said, people, especially clients, especially in the B2B area, don't want to have changes very frequently. But this is not because they want to have don't want to have something new or something to watch over. It is more about that they are afraid that you break something because you deliver huge updates, you don't know what happens, and then a lot goes wrong. If you just deliver in small batches, you know what's going on, the impact is low, and then they start to accept those things. But it was always those very large updates where you oftentimes had a major update, a major, let's say, a 7 version, semantic version update of one in the major part. And of course, there's a lot going wrong in that case because you have 6-month packed of updates just, released to so many devices. Of course, there will be, things broken in the end.
Yeah.
And this is where actually the reason why so many clients and we were working with those companies, but the clients of those actually had those problems, and they said, okay, maybe you should maybe wait a little bit. We are simply afraid of you deploying stuff. So and that's actually the real problem. So you need to get to these small batches. It's so extremely important to understand this difference. It is the difference between day and night.
And the world is no longer full of mischievous children in basements hacking things.
Mm-hmm.
Security is a real concern, and if you cannot deliver today's change today safely with no drama, you're insecure. You're just a risk, and hopefully you're not working on anything important. But Grant Mill had something I'd love to talk about.
Yeah, let's put it on the screen. Grant mentions we would branch for release, so mostly check into main, but once we are ready for release, we would branch to stabilize and run regression, right? So it assumes some kind of QA process that would freeze some kind of release process. Then you would fix bugs in the release and merge back into main.
So I would say that this is a step, but it would still add stress to me because at 3 o'clock in the morning, again,
if you
I'm
have
not
to
going to
quickly
go branch,
get something
stabilize.
from, yeah.
This is something where if we focus more on stabilizing the test suite, that we won't have to have release branches. The other reason people use release branches, honestly, is that they don't release frequently enough, and so the batch size of release is huge. Yeah. So
what I noticed
how do we address that?
What I noticed the most when you mentioned how to address this is that I don't have a problem with the setup Grant mentioned if the regressions don't cause the system to flow backwards, right? So it has to be a unidirectional flow into the system, right? So if the batch has accumulated to the degree that 99% of the branch is stable and there was one regression, if now all of it goes backwards up the stream, not towards trunk, then that's
the main issue I have is that one of the principles I am hardcore about is that we only have one path to production.
Yeah.
And so this is
otherwise,
a slide.
Always in the back of your mind, there will always be an excuse of, okay, but I can think of a break glass moment where I have to bypass procedure and have like a hot fix
and this is the thing. There's just like a slide that I have in mini decks where it's like a scene from the Avengers, and it's the first Avengers movie where oh crap, Banner is about to turn into the Hulk, and they're asking him how he can control it. He's like, how do you just get angry? He's, well, the secret is I'm always angry, right? And this is the secret of continuous delivery is we only ever use our hotfix process. So if this is the hotfix process, I'm fine with it, but I don't think it is. And
the fix forward process, right?
Exactly. And a lot of organizations that do Git flow or something similar, I've seen or observed, if they have it formalized, if they have the deployment procedure written down, like a vast majority of them also have the hotfix procedure also written down. And when I come into that organization, I say, great, you already have formalized how to do trunk-based development. It's just that use that one, please, not this one.
100%.
How do we do QA? And the immediate next question is, then how do we do QA?
And I want to be and I want to be clear. It's not that I'm unrealistic. I'm not unrealistic. I've done this in multiple contexts, and I don't want people to feel bad about where they are today. I just want people to understand that that's where they are today, and to be very safe, to get all of the benefits that you're going to get for security, safety, and product delivery. That taking it seriously, doing things like one path production are just so important. You have to solve problems.
So
Greg Miller's continuing on that one.
Yeah, let's go through the comments, because we have a few threads going on. So Grant mentions, so this is the sort of Git flow conversation that we've had in chat so far. Thank you, Grant, by the way. Loving the interaction. So Grant mentions you always had the release branches for hotfix, but it reduced merge problems as code was always unmained.
Yeah, and trunkbaseddevelopment.com actually talks about this pattern. And it's like the last step before you've figured out what the roadblocks are to reducing batch size. And this is a pattern I would recommend to people if they are delivering less frequently. And if you are doing the if you are making the fix on the trunk, cherry picking that fix up to that release branch, releasing the release branch, I'm good with that. If you're delivering, infrequently, right?
If
by
you're
infrequently, I mean like,
and it's reasonable. But if you have to cherry pick, 1,000 commits in the right order, and somebody can make a mistake on that, like I would draw the line. So obviously there's some caveats there.
The main thing is the direction of flow, right? The change should always flow from the trunk to the release branch and never in the other direction. Yeah,
if you end up cherry picking hotfix from release back to trunk and then cherry picking back up and reverting a commit, God forbid, and it gets
it increases touch points.
I've seen this go
wrong. It increases
this
touch
way.
Points and then it risks regression. It just means the next release might not have that fix. So.
Yeah, we got a comment on that from Jasper. A new name. Haven't seen Jasper on the stream yet. Hello, Jasper. Jasper mentions hotfixing in Gitflow is horrible. Fix the master branch, then merge back to the common release branch, then merge back to the etc. Exactly. And God forbid if there's a long-lived branch that somebody else is working on that has to go through the whole flow and then back onto their branch, and then somebody makes another change, and then now we have a conflict. And if you did rebase, now your hotfix is under the wrong order, and you don't even know which diff was the correct one when you're just looking at them side by side. And those kinds of rebase merge conflicts are the worst. They are really
I don't know if you know this, there's projects on GitHub to automate Git flow.
There are projects on GitHub that automate Git flow. That sounds so
should tell you enough about the branch.
It sounds so terrible.
But again, so I mean, all of these things that we talk about, all the ideas I push come from, we have to solve this really hard problem. It's like, I kind of touched on, I had a few people give me a whole bunch of pushback on that direct production access should be a break glass emergency with a heavy escalation. I had one person who was a scrum master talk about the toxic environment I was suggesting with lack of trust. And I'm like, number one, I have a lot of trust. I trust that if you give me production access, I will continue making the mistakes I have previously made with production access and caused massive impact. And other people talk about, you just got to go and fix things sometimes. I'm like, yeah, and if I need production access to do that, instead of really using some sort of pipeline, then we do it. Then we have a postmortem, and we fix the reason why I had to have direct active production access, so we don't have to do it again, because it's so freaking dangerous. And insider threat is your biggest security threat. You're just going to give people production access.
And not just security, also privacy. We're mostly from the EU here, and I believe we have a EU heavy audience today. In very large companies that have a lot of user data, also for GDPR reasons and data protection and data privacy reasons, also need to document and limit touch points to private data. So it's not just about fixing something, but you also shouldn't just by default have access to certain data points, certain code, and even that in the EU has to be documented.
it's people solving the wrong problems and optimizing for the wrong thing. And I've run into it for years. It's, developers who want to optimize for developers instead of developers optimizing for business value. I've had this conversation. The feature flags, an example. It's going to take more code. Our job is not to make our job easier. Our job is to deliver better business value, and then try to make that easier. Right?
There's easy and then there's valuable. Pick one.
Yeah. It's like not optimized for minimum lines of code. It's optimized for better business value, faster feedback.
I just had a little conversation with another solopreneur, and they're sort of experimenting with the positioning statement, and they had this they kept going back to this idea of, it won't be hard for you, right? So here's this expensive, complex process, but don't worry, we'll be dealing with the low-hanging fruits first. And I said, well, if it's expensive and complex, then they don't want to use the expensive, complex process to only deal with the easy problems. If they're paying this much money and paying this much attention, let's deal with the hard problems. Because the tool should match the complexity and the impact of the problem. Because otherwise, if it's a low-hanging fruit, I don't want to pay a consultant for a complex process a lot of money, right? So it should be, the incentives and the value should be matching the intensity or the exposure, let's say, to team activities or just attention or focus to cognitive load on a team. There's a lot of movement going on with the Dora metrics and with Flow about if me having the root access means that when I go SSH into the production database and I have to have somebody with me in the room looking over my shoulder, maybe that's a problem. Maybe we should have tools for that so that we don't even have to have the procedure in place.
I mean, there's so many massive impacts I or coworkers have caused because we had production access. And I remember the first time I had production access taken away from me, I was so angry because it made my job harder because I couldn't just...
I had to send, we had an incident once in one of our companies, and I had to send an engineer home. Not as punishment, but they were pale, they were in shock. And I just, they just had to go for a walk to get some fresh air because they were shaking. They were like, "Oop, Dennis, I just did something bad on the production DB."
Oh, so
we have a backup.
So I was one day,
and they were shaking, and they were mumbling, and they just had typical shock response, and it was horrifying. It's like, why are we exposing this risk? Like, why are we allowing, especially, it wasn't a huge problem, but they thought this is, oh my God, my career's over. This is it,
dude.
I will never recover from this.
I logged into production one day to clear logs because the logs.
I see where this is going. I immediately see where this is going.
Yeah, and I went in and I said RM
cleaned a bit too much.
-f asterisk space .log. And then I sat there and I was like, wait, why is this taking so long?
Yeah. Oh. It hurts.
And then my heart just dropped, and I log in, and I'd been very efficiently wiping the bin directory from a distribution center. Now, fortunately, I also very rapidly was able to FTP all those binaries over from another distribution center because the way our version control worked was.
This is how we fixed in the past, right?
It's even worse.
And there was no impact, but in just a few more minutes, I would have shut down the DC.
Yeah.
And that's even thousands of dollars a minute.
It's even worse when your command line tool is not so obvious, right? So you might be doing a destructive rsync, for example, right? You might say, I want to rsync a directory, and all of the files I don't have that the server does have, delete those, right? To create a complete copy. And you might not know that might have a destructive consequence. If somebody has put something really important, like some data or images or file uploads in any of the subdirectories, that's now gone. And that's really it's hard because a lot of those commands work like that, and you might unknowingly have root access to those things you shouldn't have, even if you have access to the server, maybe the
So-
user you have access with already has too much
Deleting the development database. Just the problem is you are not on the development database.
Yeah, wrong
So-
server.
Well, hang on. So Jeff has a great comment I want to touch on.
Okay, let's get that on screen.
And Ajana has a great comment I want to touch on because it's
Wait.
related.
Which one
Can
of
you
Jeff's?
click on those?
Yeah,
You should
which
be
one
able
of
to
Jeff's?
as well.
But the one other thing I want to talk to you about is the accidentally root access. I was on site at Sun Microsystems Distribution Center for quarter end processing, where they had one of us on site. This is when I worked before Walmart. I love telling these stories because I can't get arrested. We were having an issue where the handhelds that people were using for picking would occasionally freeze up, and I was trying to diagnose this issue. But in the meantime, the fastest way to get them working again was just to kill their process. Mm-hmm. And so it was just like I'd log in as them, and then I'd say kill -9-1, and kill the process. And they'd log back in. And I was in the middle of trying to diagnose something. I turned to one of the support people at the distribution center. They're full-time IT support people because I was coming in from my company that we supplied the software, and I asked them to do this. Mm-hmm. All of them had in their aliases aliased kill to sudo kill.
Oh no!
And so I tell them to do that, and then suddenly people start walking up, and everything like the DC stopped working. They shut because they killed the database engine and killed. They just killed everything. It took like an hour and a half to bring things up and then hope that the tape, that the database logs were caught up enough so that we didn't lose too much data.
Like we had this issue once accidentally in one of our back when we had like real hardware servers, not in the cloud, but we owned like a few racks in a data center. And we had this issue in one of the kernels. I don't remember which one it is, but it's an old one. I think over 10 years now, where if it got to either a combination of memory and file handle exhaustion, it would start killing processes manually to try to recover, to keep the kernel again, to continue operating. And it would do crazy stuff. And sometimes you wanted to catch it. Sometimes it would just kill just enough and maybe kill a vital process like auto vacuum on a Postgres instance, but then continue operating. Or it might kill auto vacuum and SSH, and then you're like, is the server down? No, it seems to be operating. But why aren't the indexes updating? Like something's really wrong here. And you would never notice that because you would have to have gone through the logs on monitoring to see that, 17 hours ago we had a massive spike that caused file handle exhaustion, and it killed accidentally one of the processes, and that operation could not be logged.
Yeah, so I want any executive who might be listening to this to wonder how much that's going on with people like me who are making mistakes because it's an unsafe working environment, and then just fixing the mistakes before anybody finds out. Just fear of getting fired, or I just need to get this fixed, or whatever reason, and it's just going on, and they don't know until something terrible happens.
Yeah.
So what protections are you putting in place to keep people safe? Yeah. To Jeff's point about socks. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Which one is that? Okay, that one. Yes. Okay.
This is something else that, working, I've almost always worked in regulated environments. Walmart's a financial institution.
Yeah.
You're moving boxes. It's the same as money. SOX applies to places like Walmart. And I hate compliance theater. I mean, is it enough to dance and sing in front of a cab, have them sign off of it, and then we're just covered if there's an error, or if we're not compliant? Or should we bake the compliance into the pipeline so I can't be non-compliant? The company I work for, we really focus on developing open source solutions for problems like this. We've got a tool called Lula that's in early stages of development right now. And if you go to Defense Unicorns to Lula, it's our compliance as code engine that's right now focused on OSCAL and NIST things for the government. But I mean, if it's not in the pipeline, it doesn't exist. You're writing a policy document and saying, follow the policy. That doesn't happen. It's fantasy. You can either pretend or you can take it seriously and use continuous delivery and bake it into the pipelines.
This is also sort of co-aligning with that idea that a QA department that only does, release gating or testing or regression testing isn't solving a hard enough problem. Because the human going through the manual process of QA, whatever that means, they can also make a mistake. And they can make just as many mistakes QAing as the developer who we've implemented.
They're not magically perfect because you gave them a QA title.
Exactly.
And so the other one I want to talk about was they said I would test the remove or drop script in development database first. Yes.
Anjana, yeah.
100%. And then you would deliver it with a pipeline that would have controls baked into it to make sure that the right person was able to do it, that it was matching whatever security policies or compliance policies that exist. It's fully tested. And then you deliver it with a pipeline. You never have direct access to production except in dire emergencies. And then you fix the reason for the emergency.
You prevent it. And
you keep me safe. Keep me safe while I'm trying to rapidly respond to incidents. Keep me safe.
Yeah, you had even simpler things like having no protection rules for your branches. Sometimes people remove branches in their IDE and they're not protected. And I saw that already, that you have basically a main branch which wasn't protected. And you had some older branches, and people were then restoring out of local IDE history in hope that you basically had all the last changes in it. And that's, you need to have those things in automation. You need to have them from beginning to the end. And this is where I saw that already, that you talked about Lula. That's actually a quite interesting thing. Maybe not for all companies, but the idea behind is very important for everyone. You need maybe it is a little bit too complex for smaller companies, but smaller companies often tend to still do. Let's say they are still too flexible at things. They think, or often start with just a handful of developers. They trust each other. They know each other for years. It's working still somehow, and then they suddenly they grow. They grow. They get new people, maybe more teams, and then basically problems start to really happen, and those can go really wrong. And you need to have those things not as a convention, softly spoken somewhere or written down, as you mentioned. You need to have that as a hard requirement. So there is no discussion about how to do that. Either it goes through or not. So then you can discuss if it's necessary or not, but you can't just do that physically. You can't. And this is where you need to get to.
Yeah, I don't get to it doesn't matter how big you are. There are things that you can do to just incrementally add safety. It's not, oh, we're too small to worry about these things. You should always be worried about them. But the cost of starting is so low, and the cost of making it incrementally better all the time is nothing. Just take a few minutes a day and go, what can we do to add slightly more safety today? And how do we standardize our repository security configurations across all of our repositories?
I mean, to your point, standardization and improving process, and connecting it back with that pull way of working. If you're being assigned work and the batches are too large, right? If you're assigning a too large batch of work at the same time, it is naively assuming that after we're done with the first item, that the first item doesn't produce anything that is more important than number 2, number 3, and number 4, right? So that's the thing. If I just did what you just described and had to manually touch something on a production server, and number 2 and number 3 are already number 2 and ticket number 2, ticket number 3, ticket number 4 are already assigned from the previous week. Well, now I just realized that yes, I was able to finish this. But immediately the next thing I should be working on is to make sure I never have to deploy it this way again. So I would actually push our plan forward, which now breaks commitment, right? So now this would be an incident. Now me doing the right thing because work was already assigned naively too far into the future. And I come from the Balkans, right? So everybody wants constant plans. And if you don't produce a plan, you are being treated as unprofessional, oh, you're not planning enough, right? So I know we're not going to work on anything unless there's a plan. The issue is if I do these kinds of procedures and there's an issue, if I say, okay, we need to eliminate root access, if I'm doing a sort of push plan kind of modus operandi in the entire engineering org, it gets pushed to the tail end of the backlog, which means it will never get addressed.
Yeah.
And
And
then these things get fester, and then these things spread, and then the amount of, we will have to do this. There's this business problem and that business problem, and the higher ups need to align on when we do this and why we would do that. And it's just pushing away all the things you as an engineer, as a mature professional, are responsible for. You could act on it now, but you're pushing away and you're making it optional. You're making the important decisions negotiable. The problem is that the people negotiating don't understand just how important this is.
Well, and the mental model most people have of software development is just wrong, because they ask for these long-term plans, and they think it's manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
There is manufacturing in software development. It happens after I push code, and it's done by robots. Right.
But I like where you went with this. So in manufacturing, because you say you're comfy with logistics. In a manufacturing plant, so non-software plant, what does a plan solve? What hard problem does having a plan solve?
So it's capacity planning, and it's also making sure that we're delivering the right amount of things at the right time. You don't want to deliver a whole bunch of cars that aren't getting shipped.
Yeah, why is that important? What are the slow-moving or expensive parts in the pipeline?
Well, so I'm not an expert at manufacturing. I know that if you're building an assembly line, that there's stations on the assembly line, and you need to make sure that you have a consistent flow, and you're not backing up batches waiting on a station. And so you're trying to architect that assembly line in that way. I mean, I think of the robots and how we architect the robots and what they do that same way. There's how much can I parallel to happen quickly, that I don't, how to minimize those dependencies, so I'm not building up batches anywhere in the pipeline. And
presumably those assembly lines are expensive, and you don't want them to idle, so you might want them to be optimized for busyness and sort of
I mean, yes and no, because you still have to do maintenance on those. So you need to optimize for the right amount of capacity so that you can go through and take something offline and maintain it without disrupting everything. If you optimize for 100% capacity.
So for everything you said is sound, and if I just add the word software to it, it sounds completely dysfunctional.
Well, because the problem with software, is that they think it's manufacturing. Instead of inventing new things. I mean, what the Gantt chart looked like for the light bulb? I mean, what was the long-term plan for delivering that first light bulb? Right? I mean, what was the date they gave for delivering that first light bulb? I mean, we had to invent the light bulb. And unless we're refactoring well-tested code, we have a lot of uncertainty in what we do. And to your point, we deliver something where we think we have certainty, but you don't really find out until you go to production. And then you find out for real what problems you actually have that we need to address before we should move on to the next thing. It's inventing new capabilities all the time. And even the robots who are doing the manufacturing isn't really manufacturing, because it's like building an assembly line for drills where every single drill is very slightly different from the drill that was delivered before. It's all bespoke. I mean, it's like you can't put hard expectations of success and timelines when you're inventing new capabilities.
Yeah, this is what we discussed about an hour ago. It's like, what are the expectations of things you put in? Well, the expectations in a good process, they develop over time. You have small things, you get feedback, you iterate on them, which means that if you have on Monday a new ticket, you will know more about that on Friday. So you don't know. It's not like the very traditional engineering thing where you plan most of the stuff up front, and then others building that and you just oversee it. So it is not like that. You have that process, but it's just maybe a day, 2 days, 3 days long, that process, and then you go to the next little thing. And this is, I think, the difference to manufacturing as well. Manufacturing is planned like we build a product for this, let's say, this goal for this date, and then for the next one. The same with the software, just smaller batches, smaller time frames we have. And this is what software development is about. This is the actual cycle, the feedback cycle. What we got.
Well, this is the other. Gary Gruber has his book "Engineering the Digital Transformation," which calls this out very, very well because, to Jeff's point, people don't understand manufacturing, and they apply manufacturing principles to software development. But Gary's book actually does a really good job at talking about the things that are the same, because Gary has a manufacturing background too. And he talks about the things that are the same, but also the things that are very, very different. The economies of scale are very different in software.
Yeah.
But things that are the same are things like I forget the term for the set of parts required to build a thing, right? That's still the same. You don't want to just grow. You don't want to have like 5 different kinds of screws if one will do. Right? That applies. But a lot of the other things that people think applies don't. They should really read Gary's book. Short to the point because he's an engineer.
There's another aspect maybe from the last days and topics we had is the one aspect is this, let's say, old school traditional manufacturing engineering aspect, which is often maybe not suiting that good anymore. And we just talked about that we have it in a small, but we have it on the other side as well, which is oftentimes this artistic aspect to software development as well. Oftentimes we have software development shops who don't know anything about quality. And I just mean quality now by definition. So quality by definition is something you set. You said you want to have this quality, and then you either over-engineer or under-engineer. You basically never hit this. It's a little bit off both. And it's always good to have it a little bit above than below. But this is just a rule of thumb. But this is not known to most people. People think quality must be as good as possible. It's some kind of the more the better. And we see that quite often in areas like where you have more design aspects in it. People want to put as much in as possible without getting feedback beforehand, which means that they have a high over-engineering tendency for especially in UI development, where they spend way too much time in fiddling out features no one really needs or asks for. And this is one of those problems I see as well quite often, especially when we call software development and not engineering. So two distincting things and specific soft differences there, where people really, there's, for example, front-end development, app development, web design, they derive from media, while the traditional back-end development infrastructure is deriving from more computer science, ops, and typical Java development engineering stuff. And you see those both worlds, those type of engineers and developers, they are different, but they are mixed together in teams today. And you need to get this under control as well. I see so many teams causing problems because they are in a constant over-engineering state when it comes to features. This is what sometimes people call feature creep then. In reality, it's basically a wrong handling with quality. And on the other hand, they have low quality when it comes to delivery, testing, and other things, because this falls short then because they focus on the wrong thing. And this is what people should be aware of, that quality is something you need to understand before you actually set it for yourself. And then you need to adjust it over time when you get new feedback. And you need to stay in that cycle.
Years ago, and I think it was on Nova or some other Frontline or something, but they were talking about this meeting that happened between American and Soviet nuclear physicists who were talking about, the Soviets were talking about how pure they were refining their uranium, their weapons grade uranium is like how many nines of purity, and the U.S. response was, ours still goes boom. It's like it's pure enough. Right, it's the right level of quality for what we're trying to get done. Agreed. Focusing on too much quality when it's not necessary adds a lot of expense and complexity. To your point about front end, I've seen teams who don't have real clear direction on what the product is supposed to do, create all sorts of fun and wonderful things. On my team years ago, one of the front end developers made one of the icons wiggle. I said, "Why do we have this feature in the front end?" I said, "It's annoying me, and I'm not even using the app every single day." It was just fun for them, right? It's like if it's not adding value. There was another one I saw where every time you open the front end, it would do like this animation.
And it comes back.
Animations, yeah.
It comes back to your point. When I was doing research for this show, I listened to that A/B testing talk that you gave, and you made a good comment on this. You said quality means that it meets the user's requirements, not your requirements that you wrote down. But think of it like a service industry, like a 5-star hotel. The number of stars says how many possible user needs it can meet. Right? So there's this idea of quality of it ticks the boxes for the user. Like whatever we had to do to get that done, it ticks the boxes for the user. Whatever they said the boxes are. And to Anjana's point, in regards to features, quality starts with requirements. Every requirement change results in code churns.
Well, but the assumption should be the requirements change, because the assumption should be the requirements are wrong. Now we need clear requirements to decompose the work to the level where we can get fast feedback on how wrong the requirement is. But the assumption is that we're doing the requirements wrong. I was PMI trained. I know how to do all that project management crap. And I've had project managers talk to me about how you agile people, you just don't have enough discipline to get good requirements. I'm like, no, I have enough discipline to know they're bad.
Yeah, I agree. I learned it as well in study, and it was like a static, strange process where people sitting there trying to see 1 year, 2 years, 3 years into the future. And which is actually, you have problems to do that 2 weeks, and they're really sitting there, and it was like science fiction. It was a little bit like everyone was writing a novel, but not really requirements. It never ever in my career I saw that this plan was really working out. So I don't appreciate those.
This is why SAFe and PI planning is so humorous to me.
Yeah, I did PMI. I didn't finish the certificate. I started doing the literature. I just saw this was nonsense, and I also did a little bit of agile exploration. The capital A, the registered trademark agile, which oh my god, don't get me started on Scrum. When we go into coaching, I always say, linear B, the Dora metrics, they all have very good key points, and we can just follow the industry literature on this and the recent case studies done by Google and Project Aristotle and Linear B and the Dora metrics. Is that all you need is planning accuracy.
Yeah.
If you're telling me that your planning accuracy right now is 10% for a 3-month roadmap, I don't want to talk about 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about, can we accurately predict what will happen tomorrow? Mm-hmm. Let's start there. Let's cancel the whole sprint. Let's cancel the whole plan. Let's cancel the whole roadmap. Let's just leave it there. We don't have to do anything destructive. But let's assume that we're so wrong and so off on these metrics that we need to get down to the smallest unit of delivery where we can say, you know what, we are 95% sure that that's actually gonna happen, and B, it's actually valuable. Mm-hmm. Let's get down to that.
There's some hard benchmarks I use for, are we going to be an effective team or not? I mean, there's just things that are objectively true, right? Mm-hmm. One of those is we can integrate code every single day. If we can do that, and at least daily, minimum daily, we have a good chance of being an effective team. Another one is that none of our stories require story pointing.
Yeah.
That every story takes 2 days or less, preferably less, and because we have to get to a nice level of certainty in that story. And frankly, my entire career I've had to estimate deliverables, and I can tell you that I'm pretty good at it, as long as I stick to below 3 days.
Yeah. I have a little trick here that my mentees hate. They hate it. It works. Mm-hmm. It's really effective, and they hate it. And I love it. I love it every time when I get the gut reaction, because I tell them, look, if you hate that this takes so long, and we did this today with one of my fresh mentees, if this takes so long, if you're not happy with how long it takes, and if you can't look me straight in the eye and tell me this is definitely going to be done next week, let's do a simple exercise. Rather than planning ahead, just create a ticket. Once you're done with the day, just create a ticket, put in what you did today and what you finished today, and hit done. So that we're brutally honest and transparent to how little gets done if we don't take this seriously.
I like that.
And then we can use that as a starting point.
Yeah. Yeah, you need a baseline to compare against.
Yeah, and the baseline is much lower than they thought it was. They hate it. And once they see that, they're like, oh, but if I do that, then it's like, but it looks like we're really slow. And I'm like, yeah, but we are really slow. We are really slow because we're not taking the process seriously. And maybe we need to get the important thing you really want at this speed. And maybe we don't have enough luxury to do all those other things, to entertain all those other features. Maybe we should just really just focus on this thing because it is that slow, especially if we don't get feedback. And that gets the wheels turning.
First step to get aware of that. That's so important.
But it's a tough nut to swallow.
There's something that Adrian said I want to circle back on. The difference between front end and back end development. Because I have a very specific view on this, and just because of excuses people have made to me over the years about why they can't test things.
I saw you
posted about this today.
Yeah,
I did. But I see the only difference between front end and back end development is the consumer side API, right? Where back end is focused on silicon consuming the API, and front end is focused on wetware, meat, humans consuming the API. But the engineering mindset that we use should be the same. The problem we have is for both of those is that you have back-end developers who think that user experience isn't important to them because they're working on services. And you've got front end, which means that their API is a nightmare to consume for other developers.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have front-end developers thinking it's art, which means they don't have to focus on the engineering and that all the testing happens in the back end anyway. And they're both so wrong.
Yeah, it is. It is so true what you just said. And I have this problem so often still today. With our clients, in other companies, it's everywhere. It is literally everywhere the same problem. And this is oftentimes people sitting there arguing, you need to let's say it's about APIs, it's about there is a new feature to implement. For example, a aggregation of two APIs and a filtering. And then backend people just said, oh yeah, I've just created a new API, you can handle this then on the client. And the client is the people saying, oh, but why don't you do that for us? We don't want to have this, we are designers, we don't know so much about algorithms, getting things together. And then they're sitting there arguing who shall do the feature. They don't see them as one. They are in a mindset not one team. It's not a DevOps team. It's the backend and frontend, which is the reason why I totally dislike the separation of those both. It was better actually back in the days when we called ourselves full stacks, where one person was developing one feature or two person working on one feature. But it was basically, there was no distinct difference. Of course, today we have other requirements, other qualities we want to have. So probably we need those specialists, but those specialists need to learn together as to be a full stack team. We need to have at least a full stack team mindset.
Well, you have to have the mindset of don't be a dick to other developers, right? And so, pretend like the people using your stuff are homicidal and know where you live. Be nice to people. So the
non-dick mindset.
You can't. You have to have the full stack mindset, but you can't always be a full stack team. And I'll give you a specific example. If you're working on something like Walmart.com, okay, it's not a front end with a service. I mean, I know somebody who spent years only building the tax calculation module that's consumed by Walmart.com and Walmart.co, in the UK and several other places. It's just this one capability of calculating tax, right? Now, they expose an API. Now, fortunately, this person, I have a lot of respect for him, and he makes sure that they have a friendly API, right? But you have, if you're building a thing, you either have consumers that you care about, or you're building something useless.
Yeah.
So care about your consumers. I saw this great blog post on the Google Test blog years ago that talked about incentivizing good APIs by making teams build contract mocks that consume their API and exposing those to other teams, so those teams have virtual services of their that they can use to do contract testing correctly. Because if you're not dogfooding your API, it's going to be garbage.
Yeah. And it's really important that when Grant mentions, you need a holistic approach. If it looks bad, we all look bad. And I would expand this to, it's really important to take a holistic approach to testing without resorting to end-to-end testing, right? Because end-to-end testing is just this reductionist idea of, we don't know how to test it, so we'll just try to simulate the real world. Right? That's not actual productive testing. You'll just
that's something else.
You're simulating. You're simulating the eyeball. It's going to consume the system without the brain. It's not a very good test.
I tell people if I have to have an end-to-end test, I have architectural problems because I don't have loosely coupled, highly cohesive services. They're not highly cohesive. I've got a distributed monolith somewhere in there, and now I have to have an end-to-end test to fully test that feature. It's an architectural issue. Just fix the architecture.
Jeff has a comment. Jeff has a comment saying having separate front end and back end teams causes incentives for the two to not work together as team members. If it's possible to implement front end features without changes to the back end, they're forced to do so, no matter how horrible the design is. And I've seen this with a lot. I've seen this with back end and DBAs and ivory tower architects and back end and staff engineers with back end. Whenever there's a dysfunction like this, it's.
I think some of that also is you can fix some of that with culture, though. So when I worked in logistics before, the last team I worked on logistics, we had a hard dependency on another team that was providing, they're providing information on their service. We had to coordinate changes for features to work. We had to do all those things. But also, all of the tech leads on the area were on one guild. Where we were synchronizing on how to modernize the system. We had this checklist of things that we were implementing, building out 12-factor apps and having the right sort of item potence and all, just all the things to start decomposing the system. So we were collaborating very closely on that, which meant we also had the culture of we're going to collaborate on things. It's not your fault or my fault. We know what our domains are. We know what we're responsible for. We're going to start with defining what the interface is going to be between our teams to get this feature done. And then we're going to go and deliver independently of each other to get that done. It's like you don't have to have PI planning and a whole bunch of meetings to get this done. Just talk to each other. When I worked for Bill Svergraben, I asked him how they did that at Netflix. He said, well, we had a new feature that impacted a bunch of teams. The leads of the various teams got together and we just kind of talked about it. Like, yeah. Why can't we just do that?
Yeah, that's often the case. People try to find systems, even choreographies, to do that every day, standing up, clapping hands, turning around instead of just talking to each other. And this is sometimes very strange. So let's say 15 years ago, no one was actually doing those choreographies like Scrum. You don't do that. Why? Why should you spend time on some fixed thing instead of just going over to the other person and ask for? It is the same with asynchronous code reviews. If you have the chance to just go over and ask someone for 3 minutes of help, no one is ripped out of a context and thing is done. You get immediate feedback and can go on. This is actually how you do that. And it is about, in the past, no one was thinking about that. You were just going over to someone and ask. You still can do that today with tools like GatherTown. GatherTown is actually made for that, type of purpose. That you don't need to call someone, maybe he's picking up the phone. No, you just walk over and start talking. And if you have a good convention there, you can basically say that everyone needs to have camera on, everyone needs to have microphone on in a good quality, and then you just walk over and ask. And this is the single most effective way. There is no more effective way between humans to just communicate. This is what we actually made for.
Or walk away. It's one of the key things. Coach Bob does this. Coach Bob does ensemble programming, but he does like a marathon, 8 hours of it. And what he encourages is get on Gather Town and leave your camera on so that we can see the chair. So that then once we see your digital avatar and we see your camera on and we see your chair, we will obviously not talk to you because we know you're not in the room. We won't do that thing where Dennis, are you here? Dennis, are you with us? Then wait for 5 minutes, and then I don't think Dennis is here. And then I say, no, I'm here. And it's like, what?
At Defense Unicorns, Gathertown is our corporate offices.
Nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're 100% remote, but we're also 100%. We want to collaborate with each other. We like each other because we hire for people that we like to work with, and you can just walk up to. I do this all the time. I'll just walk up to a group of people and just to say hi, and talk to you in a little bit, and they're collaborating on something closer than I've seen many teams collaborate in physical space.
Right, go ahead. If you want to give us a quick pitch about Defense Unicorns, what you guys do, if you want to take 60 seconds or a few minutes to do a little pitch.
Sure. If you have a submarine, you need Bryan, right?
So, I mean, at Defense Unicorns, we're trying to solve a really hard problem. Delivering software in any meaningful way in any government space is incredibly difficult because the processes are all designed around buying tanks and not delivering software at the speed of relevance, right? Especially if you're trying to stay secure. And honestly, the fact of the matter is that every country is currently at war with each other. It's just underneath the surface happening in cyberspace, okay? And so there's conflict going on, and security is a hard problem to solve. But to actually be secure, you have to have this ability of continuous delivery. And the thing we're trying to solve in Defense Unicorns is all of the founders, a whole bunch of the people are either veterans or ex-government, and they are passionate about solving this problem. And I'm passionate about solving the problem too, just from my background. I'm not a veteran, and we're trying to figure out how do we help these organizations in the Department of Defense and federal government do continuous delivery in environments like submarines, air-gapped environments, or just how do we get the authority to operate process to the point where it can be done in minutes or days instead of years, because the process is almost always write the full thing, not even a feature, write the full thing, and then go get information about whether it's secure enough and it can be deployed. Just imagine that at the speed at which software has to change today.
Yeah. We have that.
So that's what we work
several
on.
Times daily, right?
Yeah. And we're building out a whole bunch of open source product to help everybody. And we've got a lot of, I feel dumb every single day. We have so many smart people. I met someone yesterday who's like the tech lead for KubeCuddle that we recently hired. And it's just like, I feel so dumb all the time, which is a good place to be.
And you're hiring, and I believe there's some...
Yeah, follow Defense Unicorns. We are hiring, but we really need U.S. citizens for the work we do.
You're doing a lot of government work, defense work, so
yeah.
Home base.
Yeah.
All right, Adrian, you want to do a pitch?
Yeah. I was just reading something. Sorry.
I know you're uncomfortable doing the pitch, which is why we need to practice. So
No, actually, I'm not uncomfortable. I just am not prepared. So I think most of the people on this stream already know me, so I won't be that let's say detail about me. So we just saw some new faces today, which is interesting, interesting to see. But actually, I'm one of the 2 co-hosts here in that show. We have Camilla still sometimes joining us as well, and the reason why we're doing that stream is our blogs, actually. So our blogs, what we do, what we want to contribute, and this stream here was our, let's say, joint venture. We do basically 2 times a week and talking about our topics. So it was like Thursday topics were Dennis topics, Wednesday topics were mine topics. Now it's a little bit mixed. And so to my person, I'm the person who actually tends to talk about the more cultural aspects, because what I've done over my time was being an engineer, was being an entrepreneur, was being employing people, building products, thinking like a CTO, actually being CTO in the small to medium sized area, walking and working there. And I learned a lot of things, and I wanted to give back to the community. Help others to overcome obstacles I learned the hard way, because it was a bit different, let's say 10 to 20 years ago, learning things. You were just doing that without thinking too much about it. Mentoring wasn't a big thing back then. And today you have so many, let's say, opportunities to learn faster, because you need to learn faster. Everything is, it is so fast involving everything. So if you think you know something, tomorrow it's already obsolete. Even this evening it can be already obsolete, and you need to really keep up. And this is what I feel that I can help other people doing that. This is the reason why I write my blog, Snackable CTO. This is why I post on LinkedIn. This is why we do the stream. This is why we will create, basically I will create clips out of those, what we've just discussed today. We will post it. And we love to just talk about those things. And this is what I do actually here. Yes, so this is me just from another perspective today, what I'm doing, why we are here, why we are doing this, right? Good. And you, Dennis? Maybe to wrap up the stream already, slowly but steady.
Slowly, yeah. People think I'm an agile coach and influencer, but really I'm a certified life coach with a heavy technology background. So I took the inverse route into this space, and because I live behind this model that I believe that all of you guys, all the technologists, all of our viewers, you're very intelligent people. Like nobody's really stupid in our industry. Like you gotta be pretty smart if you want to be a software engineer. But there's things you just don't do. Right, like you know what the right thing is, but you're just resistant to it. I mean, maybe it's,
or you just don't know,
or you just don't know, or you just
never been exposed.
Yeah,
it's exactly. A mix. You have resistance, and this is the reason why you don't know.
Exactly. So you have a feeling of, okay, I think it's the right thing, but I have some irrational reason why I think it's a good idea not to pursue that right now, and that's what I help individuals and teams with overcoming. Sort of get past their sort of self-imposed blocks, mental blocks most often, and just get to a higher level of delivery, higher level of quality. And recently, I got really passionate about building small communities. So we got this running here with Adrian. I also got a little book club going, and we're meeting Kent Beck next week on Thursday. So that's going to be
nice.
Exciting. We're reading his books right now. We're reading Tidy First right now, and next month we're reading Planning Extreme Programming. And he agreed to join us for the final call. So I'm super excited about that.
I deal with a little bit of imposter syndrome, especially when I'm working in environments like I'm working in now. It really helps me to reflect back on a talk that Kit gave at a very small meetup we were doing about his crushing imposter syndrome. I'm like, Kit Beck has crushing imposter syndrome. Okay. Yeah. All right. Maybe I should not let that get in my way.
And that's it. And it's all the inspiration you need. But a lot of engineers, my motto is a lot of engineers didn't have the good fortune of ever working on a well-functioning team.
Yeah.
And you can overcome that. Now, if you weren't lucky, you gotta seek out hard challenges. Maybe hard challenges internally, hard challenges externally. Maybe get a coach, maybe get a trainer, maybe change jobs. But that's why I come in to help. So one-on-one, you can find me on Mentor Cruise For anything B2B, team scale, LinkedIn is the best one. Let's build a relationship first. Let's talk, and then let's find a good fit for that. That's what I'm about, and I'm going to continue sort of improving the quality of my service and sort of the ergonomics of it. That's what I'm focusing on the most. This community was actually one of the ways of getting free advice out while also receiving feedback. So I stopped this sort of self-imposed me talking to the algorithms of LinkedIn and the algorithm of YouTube and not really getting any real life feedback from a human, from from a meatball. Oh, what word did you use? From a carbon-based. It was always silica.
From meat.
He
said meat.
Meatware.
Meatware, yes. Meatware. I wanted to talk to real people, especially after COVID. I used to mentor always within companies, and feedback was very easy to get. And I hate using top of the funnel metrics, views, likes, shares, yada yada yada, because it at the end of the day it comes down to impact, and I need to know that you know what the right thing is, but we need to be honest with each other of saying, Dennis, I know what I should be doing, but I can't get myself to do it with my team.
I was recently in a Twitter conversation where it was a conversation about a LinkedIn conversation on Twitter. And someone said that it just seemed like such a waste of time to keep bringing up these topics and talking about these things because people, argue and argue and argue. It's like, here's the thing. It's like, there's people I will argue with who I'm not going to convince them, right? But I know from the DMs I get that I've helped at least one person by having that argument.
Yeah.
Right. And the very first talk I gave, I was external talk. I was incredibly nervous. It was a DevOps Enterprise Summit in front of like 400 people, and I was stressing about it really hard. And a friend of mine told me, because I was like, I'm going to give a talk, and I care about. It's not a BS marketing talk. I'm not talking about how great Walmart is or anything. I'm talking about the impact of CD on the team and some of the lessons we learned and some of the lessons we learned not to do, mistakes we made, to help people. And I had to go help 400 people. And that was a lot of pressure. And a friend of mine said, you only have to help one person. If you help one person, you've done your job. I don't care about views. I don't care about followers. I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm just trying to help one person. I helped one person this morning. They DM'd me yesterday and told me they really appreciated some of the things I talked about at Continuous Delivery. They were trying to implement in their company, but they had this problem. And I went, okay, well, let's try to solve this problem together. It's because if we can just make the work suck slightly less every single day, let's just do that. That's what I care about. And I'm paying it forward. So many people have helped me. Yeah. So many people have helped me, and I'm not out there. I'm not a consultant. I help our customers. But I don't. You're not going to hire me to come into your organization and change it because I'm not interested. I like my day job.
A common theme that what's her name? Is it Leila Hormozi? Alex Hormozi's partner, Leila Hormozi. Yeah. So one of the things is very agile that I really get inspired by, what she mentions about just optimizing $1 million businesses, is these businesses are generally dysfunctional. If she wants to go help a business, they're generally dysfunctional. They'll have 6, 7, 8 problems. And what they are doing is they're doing like very small steps on each of them at the same time without really being done with any of them. And her job, her responsibility is to say, no, like never mind what will be in a year. Today, this sucks. And we need to make sure that at the end of the week, at the end of the day, if possible, at the end of the hour, that we're done having made an improvement on one of these. Not all of them at the same time, not all of them small change, a large change on only one thing, to the degree that we can say, okay, this is now done, we've made an improvement.
So I want to expand on that because there's a challenge I see that happens every single time someone's trying to improve anything. Okay. And I just call it conference-driven development, which it's like, I heard about a thing, I'm going to go do a thing because somebody else is doing it. Understand why.
Yeah.
I'm not just parroting, hey, CD is good because it's trendy, okay? There's concrete reasons why for every single thing I talk about, for impacting value or impacting the organization or both. Okay, trunk-based development isn't, oh, trunk-based development's cool, we should do it. No, there's concrete reasons why, right? And so when anybody's trying to improve something, if you've got some coach coming in saying, hey, you should go do a thing, why? How do I know I'm doing it well? What's the expected outcome of this? And what else is it expected to impact?
How does it help the business?
How does it help the business? And if you're trying to change your organization, if you want to do things around continuous delivery, because it makes your life better as a developer, what's the business impact? Your CEO doesn't give a damn about CD, right? He cares about the business impact. So what's the expected business impact, and how are you going to measure that, and how are you going to sell that to them?
I mean, I can't finish off the episode without, because we went through a lot of extreme programming principles, right? So we did TBD, we did short cycles, we did a little bit of pair programming, gather town, sort of assembling digitally. We did continuous integration, continuous delivery, formal business
It's wide
processes,
ranging.
Yeah. And I can't, you said one of the first things out of your mouth was you got to take testing seriously. So we got to go to TDD. What is the hard problem that TDD is solving?
Well, we talked about it, right? It's removing friction and to drop batch size, but it's also, quite frankly, an emotional force.
I mean test-driven development, not.
I'm sorry, TDD.
TDD. Yes.
Yes. So, in full disclosure, I don't always use TDD. I'm always disappointed in myself when I have to clean up the mess that I caused when I didn't.
That's very honest take.
Number one, if you're doing TDD correctly, it really forces you to think outside in, you number one, you create more declarative tests than imperative tests, but it also it acts as a forcing function on the modularity of your system. And I come from TDD from the aspect of behavior-driven development. BDD, if you look at Dan North's information, he created BDD because people didn't get TDD, and BDD was a patch to TDD. It's not an other than, but focusing on that outside in, how do I define what the interface is, and then and how do I test for the behavior I'm expecting?
Holistic,
whatever.
Yeah, holistic without being end to end.
But if you have code that was written with tests that way, it will be much easier to change that code in the future. And so that's, it impacts design. It's not about design, but it impacts design. It's not about testing, but it impacts
the forcing function you mentioned earlier.
It's a forcing function.
We had that when we were discussing coupling and cohesion, and discussing why software is often tending to become a big ball of mud. And this is because you don't think about what you do. You just start to type. You just start to couple things. You just start to
the challenge. And this goes back to the comments about front end and back end teams. It's fine to have a front end and back end team as long as you are loosely coupled and highly cohesive teams. The reason why we were very successful at not having any kind of disagreements or having one team go and build something that another team should is because we had very cohesive domains defined for every single team. Those teams knew what they owned. I own this. I need to provide that to you. If I start trying to own what you own, then we've disrupted our cohesiveness. Now we have highly coupled, loosely cohesive teams. It's wrong.
And on the topic of people, LinkedIn, Substack, especially, I'm guilty of this as well a few times, and YouTube videos as well. They talk too much about, I think, coupling. Right, so people think, loosely coupling, loosely coupling, loosely coupling, loosely coupling, but they don't really get down to what cohesion means. Because cohesion means that you are highly coupled, extremely highly coupled
internally
to the thing that matters. Internally, to the thing that matters. Which means that what cohesion means is that you are not allowed to create generic solutions that nobody asked for. and generally backend engineers are coming from this sort of almost imperative, sort of little bit of mathematical background where they want to overgeneralize way too early, especially engineers who don't do TDD.
Mm-hmm.
When I see an engineer doing TDD, not doing TDD, and they have issues understanding cohesion, I just shadow them for 20 minutes, see them design something, and I see, okay, immediately, oh yeah, I'll need this later, overgeneralizing, and that's it. Boom. No more place for cohesion.
The thing that helped
What
me
they're
the
building
most,
is now impossible to be cohesive.
the thing that helped me the most with low-level design was reading domain-driven design.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because domain-driven design applies at every level, right? It applies to the function of all the way up to the organization. Yes, just read domain-driven design and you'll learn how to test better. You'll learn how to create cohesive teams. You'll learn how to structure your organization, how to architect the teams of your organization better, right? Everything gets better if you understand domain-driven design. And for some reason, people struggle with it. I don't know why. I started with like the domain-driven design for dummies. There's like a quick start book. And that's 90% of what you need to know to do things well.
It isn't that hard. It isn't that hard. I think that the hard part is to get that understood in your team and between teams. And this is the hard part, the governance part. You need to have that right. It is not like it is rocket science to get your application, in slices. This is not that hard. It is about how you manage to actually keep this, over time, and not start to couple things you don't need to couple or should not couple. And on the other hand, you should get things together which are, for example, meant to be a module, meant to be one thing, meant to be one service or one microservice. And then this is what most people don't get. So I often see those APIs where you have those very granular APIs where they are so, let's say, so loosely coupled, and you really see that they are actually belonging to one thing. And every time you create this big overhead in things just to aggregate things together. And there's, you have, this is such an error-prone process because of this granularity, In some cases, you need to get things together. And in some cases, you need to basically isolate them from each other. And you need to learn those things early on. This is nothing you can really, let's say, change later easily. You should have that. And this is the reason why TDD is so interesting, because you make your thoughts early on about that. You start to understand what you built early on and not later when you've built that already. And then you think, I can refactor that. No, if you try to change that, this is a change. This is partly rebuilding. This is not refactoring. Two different things. If you have another architecture after changing, you haven't refactored. This is basically rebuilding stuff instead of creating value.
And so this also comes back to the requirements thing, right? Is that I'm assuming the requirements are wrong, but I need them to be clear. And by clear, I mean they're testable. And I don't care if somebody does TDD or not. But if they start development on anything other than, I want to learn something on my own, or we're building a POC to see if something is viable. If they start development without having testable outcomes, then they're just playing. This is what amateurs do, hobbyists do, or what I'm doing when I'm trying to learn a new skill. It's not something that if I'm building something that I intend for somebody to use, I know what it should do before I start coding. And I know it in a way where I can assert against it, whether I write the test before or after.
An analogy that I like using for domain-driven design, especially, in the context of requirements, is that you want to mix this idea of being a child and an adult, where you have 20 people in the room, and you want to imagine that you're making up this new fun game, but you want to be adult enough so that everybody finds it fun to follow the rules. Because if you create some weird domain boundaries that nobody likes, and you say this is how we need to organize, everybody will start either contradicting you or trying to sort of mess a little bit or impose their view of the world on you. And if you can't get alignment of how do you make the game fun for everybody, what does everybody own? How does this play happen in a way that it's actually fun and it makes sense, but also for the adults to provide some kind of structure.
Yeah,
I prefer real structure. I don't prefer playing games and having soft conventions. I said that.
No, but
before.
I think I know what Dennis is saying though, because the team needs to feel that their work is valuable. And if you've got an anemic domain that you've assigned to the team,
exactly,
it's not fun to work on because it doesn't feel valuable, right? And so it's not so much about playing games, but it's feeling valued, and that makes it more fun.
So the idea of that imagination, of the children's imagination, is that whatever design, whatever slicing strategy you decide to use, it's made up. There isn't any... The complexity that makes up your business is, for the most part, unique to your business. So it's real people making it up, pulling it out of their imagination. And that process,
I agree on that, but I have problems with the long-term sustainability of those things. Those are short-term motivational things. People start doing that. It's great, but how do you make sure that it's basically now a constant? And there you need to start to implement boundaries. And what I've learned is when you have boundaries, people accept those boundaries when they are physical. If they are not physical, they tend to fight those because they can.
I follow the definition of the boundary. If there are boundaries in software, I don't care if they're physical. What I care is that they're automated, so that there shouldn't be a human involved. So if you're telling me, Dennis,
talking about the same,
yeah. So there's this coding style here, and we made up this coding style. And it's like, I don't care. I don't care who invented the coding style. It looks okay. I can read it. It makes sense to me. In that sense, it's fun to me. Like, yeah, it makes sense. I will not object to it. But I don't want to understand it. Just put it into my IDE, give me some linter file, and I'll have my IDE automated. But if it's so exotic that it's not fun for me to play along, because it takes brain power and it's hard to automate, then it's not a good rule. That was my sort of point with that.
I want to touch on two things. When we were taking our logistics system and trying to define those domains, I mean, you're talking a couple of weeks of very, very experienced people arguing about what those domains should be, and then coming to a conclusion, to a consensus, right? Where some, and so and we were all business experts, and we were still arguing about what the domains were. So it's not easy. But also they have to be valuable domains. Even you don't, just read the book and it talks about how you need to have, you don't want anemic domains. I mean, you want something that's actually contributing something valuable. That's actually sustainable. That you build a long-term team where people come and go off the team around a valuable domain, and then people know what they own. They know what their boundaries are to their domain, and it's fun to work on because they feel valued.
And one of the things that is very easy to miss from the Blue Book is that you won't get it right the first time. So the Blue Book talks about modeling your domains, but also about continuously remodeling it until you get it right. You model it, it won't be right. You won't architect. There is no one plan. There is no ivory tower architecture that you can then follow as the main boundaries. Whatever you set up at the first time won't be correct. Won't even be useful, probably.
Sure. We screwed it up.
Iterative
Third
process,
generation, right? Iterate and continuously remodel your boundaries.
Which goes back to
teams,
TDD.
Everything. Exactly.
But this goes back to TDD, because if a TDD acts as a forcing function for modular code to be able to refactor those domains when they're wrong. And I've been through that personally myself as well. Right?
If your domain boundaries don't make sense, refactor them, change them, have the modeling discussion again. At least now your business didn't drastically change. It's just the model changed. The underlying reality of the universe of the business is still the same. So the words are the same. A lot of the knowledge that you gathered is the same. It's just you need a different model of looking at it.
Yeah.
The problem we had was that the domain was too big for one team. And so we had to split the domains. We had to find a good domain line boundary within that domain and split it so the other team, we could hand off some of it to another team, because it was just too much work for one team to get done in a reasonable amount of time.
Wow.
Good. I would say
episode.
we have 2 hours full now.
Yeah.
We have introduced, we have advertised ourselves, and I think we provided a lot of good quality content. Especially thanks to Bryan for being our guest again. And as always, this is great to have you, because the amount of knowledge, experience you have in one person, and being able to speak fluently about every topic is what we're looking for. Because this is basically our quality we set for this show. We try to keep it, and you're a little bit of over engineering in that case. So above that quality, but it's,
I find it hard to believe.
I
honestly find it hard to believe that I'm that unique. I'm just very, very loud.
And about this topic, people often try to be very polite, especially on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a polite place, and you have some people who are louder. But in the end, if you want to change yourself, the first thing you need to have is an opinion. Why? If you don't have an opinion now, you won't fail, you won't change, you will stay on what you have. I hate it. I really hate it when people say, "It depends." No, it doesn't depend. When you see a problem, you need to go into one direction, and then you need to find out if it was viable or not viable, and then you may end up in the other direction, which is totally fine. But if you don't develop opinions, you won't make a change.
Exactly. Adrian, my family immigrated from Bavaria like just before the Civil War in the U.S., and I think this might be a genetic thing we have, Adrian.
Doing over engineering on.
No. Just this is like there's right ways to do things. I think it's a very German.
Yeah, it is like that. It is like that, definitely. Yeah. So I knew this. Was that the reason why you were learning German?
I was learning German because I had a German heritage. Yeah. And everybody was speaking Spanish. Spanish was boring. I lived in Texas. Everybody's speaking Spanish.
Oh, you have basically a German surname, right?
Yeah. It was brutalized by Ellis Island. It used to be Fenstermacher when we were immigrating. Yeah, but now it's
Darkmaker.
No, with an E. It was Windowmaker, but now it got
Fenster. Okay. Because if you take the word, it's basically dark or darkness.
I know. When I learned that in German class, it was awesome. I was like, yeah, that fits me. Yeah. And my first name translates to Lord in French, so I'm the Dark Lord.
Oh, that's great. Great.
So this is the reason why you're so loud on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
No.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. This was a blast. I really enjoyed this. I can't wait to go through the episode again, the transcripts, the videos, the clips.
And I hope it's not the last time, Bryan. I really hope that.
No, I love talking about these things. I mean, it's honestly, it's just fun to find better ways to get things done. Yeah. And anytime you think I would add value, just let me know. I'm happy to have a chat.
We will do. Good. We will find enough reason in LinkedIn comments.
Absolutely.
So no worries.
To our live viewers, thank you so much for being with us. Mm-hmm. As always, this was a blast. Like, we could barely keep up with all of the interaction, all of the comments that you've been sending us, which is great. I love that you're driving the episode so much, asking questions, sharing your comments.
We will really go for the community stuff now. We have promised that for already 2 weeks or something like that. We haven't done it yet. So we are busy people, actually. So the stream is not our main business. We're doing that basically part-time. And sometimes it's quite hard. And most of the times I need to work after the stream. So sometimes we make promises and don't keep them. So sorry for that. This is not like we are not feeling resistance or something like that. It is simply we are pretty busy and still try to. So the more you basically give us feedback, the easier it is for us to really know what we're going to do. Then
Even
we don't
if the
need to
feedback
test
is,
too
hey,
much.
Where's that thing? I'm really looking forward to that thing.
So at the moment, it's like we're looking for a circle community where people can then join and have informations about next streams, next topics, and what we're going to talk about next. And people can just keep up. especially those smaller groups, book clubs, and this Snackable Dojo stuff where we go through some front-end stuff. It will be there inside as well, which is makes it easier because people ask us things and sometimes we simply forgot. It's like
we fragmented the community slightly, and now we're sort of bringing it together under an umbrella that it is starting to make sense. We're also exploring alternative platforms. So we listen to your feedback. Posting comments on YouTube sucks a bit. Video editing, video streaming on LinkedIn sucks a bit. So now we've also explored X, formerly Twitter, and we're exploring Twitch as our distribution channels to sort of give you a little bit more alternatives. So if you want a different platform, or if you want a different kind of stream encoding or whatever it is that will make your sort of viewing experience a little bit more pleasurable, you now have a few more options. Leave us some feedback on how you're liking that. Most of you are still on LinkedIn, so I think that's just how it came to be organically. But we are sort of exploring. We'll keep the doors open for that for now. But we are looking for a more community-based, at least chat room, where we could have a little bit more of a permanent presence, so that you wouldn't have to wait for us to get that LinkedIn event down to the T with exactly all the details in the thumbnails, so that we can sort of share links with you and the information about our upcoming guests without following LinkedIn and YouTube very, very, very rigorously.
One little thing, because we're talking of feedback, and I got feedback right before the show from Grant. Yep. Grant, if you are still here, give us a live sign. It was about property-based testing, and he asked that if we could touch on that. Now, if we have Bryan here for the last some minutes, do you have any ideas about... Actually, to be honest, I'm not really sure what that is, so I passed the question to you now. Property-based testing. So I never touched it really.
I don't. I haven't done it recently, and I would not profess to be an expert at it. Mm-hmm. So it's like recursion. It's one of those things where sometimes you need it.
I mean,
it depends.
I don't do a lot of it. I don't do a lot of property-based testing. Now, if you're opening up a topic, maybe we can have an episode on it. But from my perspective, from what I understand, it's coming from the field of notable architecture. John Gallagher, one of my clients, actually, he has explained this concept to me in better detail. He's quite passionate about it. It's this idea that you can look at the shape of things, even record the things, right? So you can do snapshot testing to record the public properties of something and then test against that. To sort of basically have a sort of automated duck typing against something.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about a different pattern.
While also then giving semantics onto this testing pattern.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a different pattern. So I think it's a longer conversation. We can wrap up.
It probably is. I've also heard that the C# community is using a property-based testing to denote, rather than testing the types of things, to test types anonymously, right? So rather than testing a class of something, you would just anonymize it, convert it to a DTO or a plain object or a record or a slice, and then you would compare it to that, so that you would sort of you would have domain anemic ways of mechanically testing certain properties of systems. Now, there are many camps here. I think the C# community is a little bit more nuanced on this, but I think we'd have to have Grant in chat and sort of explore a little bit more. But it's definitely a good idea for one of our upcoming streams. However, I don't do a lot of property testing, I have to admit.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. We delivered on that a little bit, actually.
Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Adrian, for remembering.
So thank you very much, everyone. Really appreciating that. I think we should wrap up now. We're going for some elevator music in the next days. There he is. In the next days, we were going for the clips. So we can talk about on LinkedIn about specific topics. So stay sharp, stay tuned, ring the bells on each of our profiles, and you won't miss it. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. And have a nice evening.
No, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.